Welcome to Pastor's Perspective, sponsored by Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa. My name is Brian Perez, and welcome to another week of our program. It's our first live one of the week, and we would love to hear from you today. We're going to be on till 4 p.m. Pacific time, so give us a call, won't you please? 888-564-6173 is our number. That's 888-564-6173. And answering your questions today, we've got Bobby Conway, the apologist that you see on the 1 Minute Apologist channel on YouTube. He's also the pastor of Image Church in Charlotte, North Carolina. On Skype, we've got Tony Clark from Calvary Chapel, Newport News in Virginia. And here in the studio with me, sitting in for Brian Brodersen, we've got John Hwang, one of the assistant pastors at Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa here in Southern California. So today is the day that you can get all the Hwang answers to your questions when you give us a call at 888-564-6173. What's up, guys?
Hey.
Greetings. I don't want to say anything anymore.
Because it might be the Hwang answer.
That's right.
Well, no matter what you say will be the Hwang answer. So what's going on, John? You want to tell us about something happening at Calvary Costa Mesa soon?
Well, one of the things that we're really excited about is...
Hang on, let's do this chronologically so that people don't get confused. Because what you're going to talk about is a Wednesday thing that starts next week.
Yes.
So really quick, I just want to tell people about something happening this weekend. On Saturday, we're doing another one of our grocery distributions here on the Calvary Chapel Costa Mesa campus. It goes from 8:30 till 11 in the morning, and you can come on out. You can get all the details on the website of our flagship radio station, K-Wave. So that's kwave.com. Go there, click events, and then you can see all the details about the grocery distribution. So that's this Saturday. And then starting next week on Wednesday night, September 21st, if you're here in the Orange County, Southern California area here at Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa, we are starting a brand new service called The Gathering. And The Gathering, the subtitle is Courses for Everyday Discipleship. And this is one way for us as a church to be intentional in discipleship. We want to see people that are followers of Jesus be better equipped to live out the life of Jesus in their homes and their communities, and to be equipped to be better witnesses, better equipped witnesses in the world. And so we are going to have some great classes that are going to be available for people to just join up for free. There's only one class that there is a cost to it, and it's a class on applying biblical wisdom in finances, just because there's some course materials that are applied. But Pastor Brian Brodersen and Cheryl are going to be teaching a class called Keywords Every Christian Should Know. That's an option. I'll be teaching a class called Foundations. And all of these are going to be between 4 to 8 week-long courses. And my class is going to be, the first 4 weeks are going to be essential doctrines, and the last 4 weeks are going to be essential things that every Christian should know for, living out the Christian life. Pastor Char Brodersen and Jordan Taylor are going to be co-teaching a class called, it's going to be on spiritual formation, which is another way of talking about discipleship. So again, they're going to be focusing on how to be equipped to live and serve in the way of Jesus. And we've got a class on the book of Philippians. We have a class on spiritual parenting. And so if this is something that you would like to get involved with and be a part of and to grow together with us in, you can go visit cccm.com/The Gathering. That's cccm.com/The Gathering. And we're super excited about this new venture for us as a church family, and we just want to see people growing in their relationship with Jesus. Love it. It's like a Wednesday night midweek Bible study, but to a whole different level. It's not just sitting in church and listening to a pastor teaching you, though there's nothing wrong with that, but this just kind of amps things up.
Yeah, and we are looking forward to seeing this expand as the terms continue to progress, just providing more classes that are going to be available. And, there's a lot of people, they wish they can go to some kind of a Bible school setting, but they just either don't have the time or the money to be able to do that. This is one way that we could provide an opportunity for people to come and take classes for free, for the most part, and to get equipped to be ambassadors for Jesus in their community.
Sounds good. So you can get more details at the Calvary Chapel Costa Mesa website, cccm.com/The Gathering. And the gathering begins next Wednesday, the 21st of September. All right, 888-564-6173 is the number to call us today with your questions about the Bible, the Christian faith, just about anything that's on your mind. You can also send us your questions using Instagram or Facebook. Here's one of the questions we got from Facebook. Hello, my name is Atiara. I wanted to know why, when I try to read my Bible or get closer to God, I have this fear and worry and anxiety going on in my mind constantly, all day. Even when I pray that it goes away, it's still there. When I'm thinking of fear, worry, anxiety, etc., am I still sinning because I haven't put my faith in God that it will go away? Tony, what do you tell Atiara?
You know, one of the things I think about when she said about the fear, the worry, the anxiety, is Philippians 4:6-7. It says, be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, to let your requests be made known to God, and the peace of God that passes all understanding will guard your heart and mind in Christ Jesus. And so we know that that sort of fear and anxiety is going to come from the enemy. The enemy doesn't want us to exercise faith in him. Hebrews 11:6, for without faith it's impossible to please God. And so when fear and worry comes in the front door, faith and trust goes out the back door. And so we have a situation where the enemy is plaguing her mind with anxiety and worry and that sort of thing. And so she's having a spiritual, attack from the enemy that is attacking her mind. And this is one of the reasons why we have to put on the whole armor of God, especially the helmet of salvation, to protect our thoughts from the enemy. And how 2 Corinthians 10:4-5 says the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty in God for bringing down strongholds, casting down imaginations, and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God, and bring every thought captive to the obedience of Christ. So she needs to bring that fear and that worry captive to the obedience in Christ and see, how can I be obedient if I'm worrying? How can I be obedient if I'm not trusting God, if I'm afraid, and all this sort of stuff? And the Bible tells us to bring every thought captive to the obedience of Christ.
Tiara, thank you for sending in your question using the messenger feature on Facebook. And here's another one from Facebook. It was sent in by Kathy and Paul. In James 3, we learn about the power of the tongue and one's words. Why so much emphasis on the tongue when the tongue is just a tool and it's the brain or the mind that drives the thoughts?
Yeah.
Bobby, what do you say?
The tongue is a organ, obviously, and Jesus was clear that what we speak flows out of our heart. At the same token, if we are someone who's not mute and our organ works, then we can use it to form words that can be toxic. So while the root of what we say flows from our heart, so to speak. Now, even that, let me qualify, because the heart's also an organ. So, now all of a sudden you're like, wait a second. Yeah, the heart can't speak, and then the thoughts can't really develop on the organ called the tongue. So how are we to understand what's going on here? Well, this is where you have metaphorical language, or figurative language, so to speak, I should say, So the heart is really being used to talk about our inner self, our inner being. And so what comes out of the soul of our self, out of our inner being, then that shows kind of where our heart lies, the position, the posture of it toward God, toward the world. So that said, ultimately we need to guard our hearts so that we can guard our words. But if we aren't mute and we're able to speak, then that organ called the tongue is able to form words in the form of a language, and those words can be destructive, as James chapter 3 says. So we have to be careful when we speak that we make sure that ultimately the core, our heart, is dealt with.
John, what would you add?
I think that's a fantastic answer, Bobby, and I love the way that you framed it and you answered it. Yeah, I mean, the fact that James talks about the tongue being either a means of blessing or cursing, it could either be life-giving or it could be harmful. You know, it's. We might have thoughts that we have against people in our minds and in our hearts, but hopefully before the tongue is weaponized, we'd be able to identify those things and take it to Jesus and hopefully deal with it there. But once you start wielding the tongue and it's weaponized to harm other people, now we've got problems that are bigger because lives have been impacted, lives have been damaged, lives have been hurt. And, you know, we've all grown up, especially for those of us that have grown up in Sunday school, you know, being taught to watch what we say and to think before we speak. And I remember hearing as a junior higher the illustration of, you know, if you get cut, that cut will eventually heal, but you're most likely going to end up with a scar if it's a deep cut. And there are people that, even though it's like we want time to heal things, there's a lot of people that are still dealing with the damage that are in the form of really deep, serious scars. And think about how many people have grown up in homes where there was verbal abuse and decades have gone by and people are assuming that they should be okay, but they're still dealing with the harm that was caused because of words. And so, and this goes back to what Tony said earlier about taking every thought captive. If those thoughts are in your mind and heart to want to harm someone or hurt someone, man, I hope you have enough common sense, enough common spiritual maturity sense to say, I better take this to Jesus because this is not the heart of God. Because once the tongue is weaponized and it's used against other people, man, that brings serious damage.
Yeah, Tony?
Yeah, you know, Jesus said in Matthew 15:19, he says, out of the heart comes murders and thefts and all this sort of stuff. And he lists a tremendous list in Matthew 15:19, talks about what comes out of the heart. So now the tongue is the bucket that goes down into the well of the heart and brings up what is there. Jesus said, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks in Matthew 12, verse 34. So what happens is that the tongue goes down and gets what's in the heart. And Jesus said murder and thefts and all this stuff is wickedness is in our hearts. This is why we have to ask Jesus to come into our hearts, that Christ may dwell in our hearts through faith, Ephesians 3, verse 17. So we have to ask Jesus to come in our hearts. So when the tongue goes down into the well of the heart, it can bring up that which is Christ-like and that which is right with God. So this is why there is a connection, because James makes it very clear in James chapter 3 that there's a connection with the heart, and it has a pipeline to hell itself. So we have to be very careful on what we say, because when people say things hurtful and things, they say, oh, I didn't mean to say that. Oh, you did, because out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So you did mean to say that. And so we have to be very mindful and watchful what comes out of our heart. So there's a connection between the heart and the tongue itself.
It looks like these two Facebook questions that we've answered have caused some of our listeners to call in with related questions. We're going to start with Jill in Texas. Thank you, Jill, for calling 888-564-6173. How can we help you?
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for all that you guys do. I've been listening for years, and I've learned so much from each one of you, and I appreciate that. So you were just talking about capturing thoughts. What exactly does that look like? I mean, what does that mean exactly? Okay.
What happens is that the thoughts that comes into our minds, we have to capture those thoughts and say, okay, with this particular thought, how can I be obedient to God? If there's a thought saying you need to get even, you need to get them back, they got you, you need to get them back. Okay, I got that thought. Will this thought help me be obedient, or disobedient to Christ. And if you say, I will be disobedient to the Lord if I followed this thought, then you grab that thought, you made it captive, and you brought it in line with the obedience of Christ. And so we need to be very mindful of these thoughts that goes through our minds, and we need to capture them. I need to be loving to my neighbor. That person hurt me, but I'm going to do something loving for them. Okay, I got that thought. I'm bringing it captive. Will this thought help me be obedient or disobedient to Christ? It will help me be obedient because Jesus said in Matthew 5, verse 44, to love your enemies, do good to those who spitefully use you. So that's how you do it. It's a way of grabbing the thoughts and say, will this thought help me be obedient or disobedient to Christ?
Is it almost like having a pet hamster or something? If it escapes from its cage, you know that you have to capture it and put it back in where it belongs. But yet with our thoughts, we don't see the thoughts. So we don't see when they run off. And so we just got to know that they're out there. John?
And they do tend to, once you get in that negativity, they tend to spiral downward. Mm-hmm. And if we just stop it, from what I understand you're saying, if we just stop it and say, is this pleasing to the Lord? And if it's negative, you're going to say no. And if it's positive, you're going to say yes. And there you go. So that's capturing a thought.
Yeah. And
you, go ahead, John. I'm sorry.
No,
go ahead, John.
Elaborate on that. I think you're doing a great job, Tony.
But yeah, and I think that what's you're capturing it because there's thoughts that Satan will place in our minds for us to meditate on that will cause us to be disobedient to the Lord. Now, there are some thoughts that come from our own wicked hearts, our own wicked minds, our wanting to get revenge, and that's one thing. But then there's thoughts that's not our own. Satan just shot a dart and in our minds trying to get us to think through some kind of thing that will cause us to be disobedient to the Lord. And you grab that thought and say, okay, will this thought help me be obedient to Christ? And then you have to say, that will not help me to be obedient to the Lord. And when you begin to take captive these particular thoughts that you're having in your mind, you will find a huge difference begin to take place. You'll find your life being more obedient to the Lord because you're taking control of your thoughts.
Yeah, and I think that's great, Tony. I agree with Tony. I think that one of the things that we see as a pattern is that thoughts determine behavior. And, and that's why when you read the New Testament, there's such an emphasis on making sure that we are thinking the right things the right way. I think about when Paul was writing to the Philippians, he gives a list of noble things to be thinking about. And he says meditate, ponder on these things because thoughts determine behavior. And it's interesting that passage in 2 Corinthians chapter 10 that Tony quoted earlier, it's in the context of spiritual warfare. And Paul was addressing these false teachers, these self-appointed apostles that were seeking to derail God's people with false doctrine. So all that to say, whether it is, fears that we allow into our life and we just let it dwell there and a little spark turns into a forest fire, or it's condemnation and guilt and we start thinking that God doesn't love us and God is angry with us all the time, or whether it is false doctrine and there is something that is being said from pulpits that is really pushing against real biblical truth. I think that one of the things that we can learn in every one of these things, that what's essential in taking those wrong thoughts captives is biblical truth. So we need to know Scripture. And so this isn't just something where we subjectively say, well, that's true and that's false. And we've got to have a standard, a basis for truth. And Jesus said in John 17:17, as he prayed to his Father, Father, your word is truth. Yeah. And so that's a great way for us to proactively discern, okay, because I have a tendency, and this is something that my wife really helps me with, I have a tendency to always think the worst about myself. And I don't know if it's just because I'm more prone to be melancholy But, when people try to be positive, say stuff that are positive about me, it's really hard for me to receive that. I love being positive about other people.
I was going to say, you're the John Cube.
But it's really hard for me to believe the best about me. And my wife is constantly saying, you have to speak truth against all those thoughts and those words, those belief systems that aren't true. And so that's really been helpful, allowing the scriptures, the gospel to speak truth into my life. And because if I allow those sparks turn into forest fires, it's not just mental, it's going to show up in how I behave. And I think that's something that's really important for us as Christians, to keep in mind.
It's sunny in California. No, I'm not doing a weather forecast. We're talking to Sunny in California, who is now on the line with a similar question. Everybody's calling with the same kind of question today. That's great. Hello.
You guys are great. Hi. It's funny, Vern. This is because I like Bobby Conway, because you have such an analytical mind, and my mind seems to be more of an enemy at me. And because I'm 70, I didn't get saved that long ago, and I'm in the Word all the time, reading books, your books, other books. But what happens is I get anxious and fear and thoughts of that, which go right into feeling, emotional feeling, and it's just I don't know how to take those kind of thoughts, because I'm also being treated for depression, and it could be biological versus circumstantial. I don't know. I'm working on that with doctors. But how do I take those kind of thoughts into captive? I will read where, what God says about it, but I keep on getting hit with them. And maybe I don't know how to really wear the armor of God well. I don't know.
Bobby, what do you tell Sonny?
Well, Sonny, I'll say first off that I'm sorry that you're struggling with this. This is not always as easy to apply in our everyday life. And part of that is because we can have bad patterns that we develop of negative thinking. And it can be like breaking any other pattern where it gets really difficult to find our way again. I would say, as it relates to, struggling taking certain thoughts captive, for me, I have literally thought myself into the darkest places of depression with negative thinking. And the idea then of capturing those thoughts is it can be like that broken record. We just keep feeding that same old narrative. We can get addicted to feeding that because that narrative forms certain lies that we end up even believing. We can get so negative, maybe on ourselves or on God, that we start having a hard time even believing for good that could come from God, or trusting that He can really break us free and bring about change. So I would say a number of things in brief order. First, we have to remember that we are not reducible to our thoughts as people. One of the reasons people have a hard time catching their thoughts is because they think they are their thoughts. Not that they think that they're literally just their thoughts, but the story going on their insides, they don't know how to discern like the voices that they're hearing and what's going on. And so we have to learn to observe our thoughts, observe our feelings from our conscious self. And so if we can learn to be more observant of the things that we're thinking about, be more observant of the feelings that we're feeling, then that will allow us to not just take those feelings, take those thoughts on, but it'll allow us from our essential self to observe what's happening to us. So sometimes we have to just get outside of the thinking loop and observe the thinking loop from our conscious self. And so that is one thing that I had to do that I found incredibly helpful. Another thing is we have to learn how to be present, because depression, anxiety, fear, worry, things like that, those are future emotions. A lot of those, like fear in particular, anxiety, worry, and they strip us from the joy of being present. And so how do you practice being present? And so that's an important feature of what it means to walk with the Lord. Like whenever we feel God's presence, we're experiencing the I am, the self-existent one, the eternal now in this moment. And so I would say something that is important is to learn to feel the moment. So for me, I would do things like observing my thoughts. I would go walk around a pond, and I would try not to worry or fear. And the way I would do that is I'd try to be attached to the moment. Like, oh, those are some trees in front of me, and look at the sun and look at the breeze and listen to the birds chirp. I was trying just to calm my mind down, to slow down. Another thing I'll do is I'll take a nap each day to just kind of focus on just relaxing myself, trying to be present. And I'm not talking about present in a Buddhist type of sense. I'm talking about really just not living in that place of worries and fear and all that stuff, to slow down and just be calm and rest in Him. So those would be a few applications that I would say that you could consider thinking about that could help you to assuage some of your inner angst. This is hard work. And I'll say the last piece is, if you have ADD, this is really tricky, because the person who doesn't have ADD, I would just say, because again, sometimes we speak to people like as if everybody has a blank slate, like this is all you need to do. You just need to get with it, figure this out. And it's just not that. We don't know. It's not like we all have the same story, the same history, the same brain. And so if you have ADD, your brain is like a popcorn machine that's firing ideas constantly. So it makes it very difficult to find that sense of calm. And so I would say be aware of what you can do to think about what ADD brains can do to find some healing.
I like what you said, Bobby, about like intentionally doing these things that we normally take for granted, like when we're walking around the pond and look at the trees. I mean, sometimes we just walk by a tree, we just look at it, we just keep on going. But to actually look at it, or to look at the water, look at the clouds, look at the flowers, just intentionally focus on those things instead of just what's going through our mind. Tony, what would you add?
Yeah, 1 Peter 5:7 says, casting all your cares upon Him, for He cares for you. The Greek word for casting is ripto. It's where we get our English word riptide from. And so what happens is that Jesus said, casting all of your cares, your worries, your concerns upon Him. Why? Because He cares for us. And so as we cast it upon Him, it may come back in an hour. We keep casting it upon Him because the tense of the Greek word means it's a continuous action. It's something we're to continue to do. Keep casting all our cares upon Him. Why? Because it may go out like the riptide and it may roll back in an hour. You keep casting it. It may stay away for a day and it may come back. It may stay away for a few days as you cast it again. It may come back. You cast it again. It may stay away for a month. It speaks of us casting our cares upon Him, for He cares for us. And so this is how you bring every thought captive. You grab that thought, say, Lord, I'm concerned about this thought, this care, this worry. I'm going to cast it upon You. Your shoulders were big enough to handle it. And then you leave it in His hands. It may roll back in an hour. You just keep casting it upon Him. Why? We're casting it upon the one who cares for us.
John, got about 45 seconds.
Yeah, I was just going to say ditto to what these both guys have said. I think that they're really good, helpful things. I really did appreciate, Bobby, what you said about just being able to go out for a walk. I found for me that's been really helpful, just either going to the beach or wherever there is the testimony of God's creation where I can just pause and take a deep breath. But I also found that journaling has been helpful because usually all these things are just rattling around in my mind and I just need to get them out. And sometimes it's really helpful just being able to write stuff out and get it out and and I generally write in the form of prayers. And that way it's all the mangled stuff in my head that usually keeps me up at night. I'm able to get on paper and know that, like Tony said, I'm casting it to the Lord. And those are a couple of real practical ways for me.
Sonny, thank you for your phone call today on Pastor's Perspective. Thank you, everybody who has called so far with their questions about this same topic, about anxiety and worry and things like that. We can continue talking about this if you want, or call us with other questions. We have some others on the board right now. We'll try to get to those next half hour. 888-564-6173 is the number to call from now till 4 p.m. Pacific time on this Tuesday afternoon. 888-564-6173. Pastor's Perspective continues now. Thank you so much for listening and for watching on Facebook and YouTube. 888-564-6173 is our telephone number. Also, thank you for following us on Instagram. We've got a new Instagram page. It's just Pastor's Perspective. Go there, find it, like it, follow it, whatever it is that you do on Instagram, and we can keep in touch that way. You can even send us your questions that way. But the best way to send in your questions and to get an answer to them is to call us and wait on hold like everybody. Well, no, not everybody. The guy I was going to go to next hung up, so I guess it's not the best way for him to get an answer. Sorry about that, Albert. Call back if you can.
Right, yeah.
But answering your questions today, John Hwang, one of the assistant pastors at Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa. He's sitting in for Brian Brodersen. On the Bobby Cam, we've got Bobby Conway from Image Church in Charlotte, North Carolina. And on Skype, it's Tony Clark, the pastor of Calvary Chapel, Newport News in Virginia. Tony, what do you think of Bobby's Bat Cave studio?
Yeah, I was looking for the 1 minute manager background, and I'm saying, what is that?
The what? The 1 minute manager?
one minute manager. I'm sorry. 1 minute apologies.
This guy can't manage anything.
I had a slip up there. Good catch, though. Good catch. I know it was a 1 minute something. I've been listening to a lot of audiobooks, and so I was like, is he in town? Is this something new? Is this a green screen? I didn't know what was happening. I was just kind of thrown off a little bit. So maybe Bobby can
just
enlighten me. Maybe he can enlighten me.
It's a rebrand.
On what's happening? Oh, it's a rebrand. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
This is basically I'm getting closer to finishing up, but it's basically going to be our new studio look for this and for 1 Minute Apologist. You know, kind of even just dropping the name right there and keeping the mic. And, you know, I got some of my favorite things. Got a little pair of Vans up there and a little, if I could have one old-fashioned car, it would be a VW bus and renovating that bad boy. So, yeah, just some cool little things.
Rebranded.
So what's the photo on the shelf? It looks like somebody blowing a piece of bubble gum or something.
It's a statue of David.
That's what it is. It's a statue of David, but David's blowing a bubble.
Okay, so that is what I thought it was. Why not?
And see, from my perspective, I can't see what y'all are talking about. I can't see that. So all I can see is just there's something over your right shoulder on the wall, and then I see something over the left shoulder, but I can't make out what that is.
Yeah, over his right shoulder is the microphone. Yes, that is a microphone. Okay. That's his 1 Minute Apologist microphone. And then over his left shoulder up in the corner is David blowing a bubble.
Doesn't look remotely close.
And it's important that you see the VW bus right there, because that bad boy is like my favorite piece right there on the shelf. Right.
And I don't see any of that. Okay. All right. Gotcha.
Bobby will invite you to the Bat Cave. You guys are just a few hundred miles away from each other. So
yeah,
that's right.
All right. 888-564-6173 is our telephone number. And now we're going to go to Canada. Here is Sophia. What did you want to know, Sophia?
Oh, hi, Brian. How are you, darling?
Doing well, thanks.
Oh, hi, Tony. I'm Dr. Bobby Conway. How are you, darling?
Hello.
Bobby? Hi.
Doing very good. How are you, Sophia?
John.
Hello.
Not too bad. Are you doing okay? Hi. Is this Tony?
Well, now
Hello?
it is.
Hi, John. Hi, Tony. Hi, John. Hi, Dr. Bobby. Hi, Brian. I love you guys so much. You guys are like my big brothers.
Oh, well, thank you.
Oh, well, thank you.
Well, God bless you.
I have a question. I hope you guys can understand it. In the New Testament, it says to love your enemy, do good to those who persecute you. Should one still read the Psalm, especially Psalm 37, over your enemies? If not, why?
All right, Tony, we'll start with you on this one. What do you say?
Yeah, see, one of the things we fail to realize is that what we see happening with David in the Old Testament, when he is saying, you know, Lord, break my enemies' teeth, just knock them in the head and just do my enemies like this. Well, you know, what David experienced and the children of Israel experienced physically, we experience spiritually in the New Testament. So our enemies are the world, the flesh, and the devil. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers and spiritual hosts of wickedness in high places. So Jesus gave us the template in Matthew 5:44, talking about loving our enemies and things like that. And so the other things that David was praying for physically, for God to break his enemies' teeth and all that kind of stuff, we're to be praying against the enemy about those things. Lord, break the stronghold of the enemy in this person's life, and we're to be doing that in a spiritual sense. So Jesus set the template: love your enemies and do good to those that spitefully use you, and then spiritually to be able to pray against the principalities, powers, and spiritual hosts of wickedness in high places.
John?
That's a great answer, Tony. You know, yes, you should continue to read these Psalms. These Psalms are what we refer to as the imprecatory Psalms. There are Psalms of lament, and they're really helpful when we're going through times of tragedy and pain and despair. And in the Psalms give us language to know that we can emote and we can bring these kinds of pain and struggles to God. There's other Psalms that are songs of praise and jubilation and celebration. And then there are these imprecatory Psalms where it really is a cry for God to bring justice and vindication for God's people. Because, you know, in a broken world that we live in, we all have choices choices to either entrust things to God or to feel like we always have to take matters into our own hands. And I think that there's something powerful about God's statement when he says, "Vengeance is mine, says the Lord, I will repay." And so I think that these Psalms really help us to understand that with God, he's not passive when it comes to evil. He's not passive when it comes to injustice. It's at the end of the day, he's not going to look at all the injustice and say, it's okay, I'm just going to let it pass. But these Psalms give language to us in our prayers that we could be honest with God when we are feeling, and legitimately so, the recipients of unfairness, injustice, and we can bring these prayers to God. And the Psalms really help us know how to form these kinds of prayers to emote.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Sophia, thank you for calling us today on Pastor's Perspective. 888-564-6173 is our number. And now we're going to go to Kevin in California. What's up, Kevin?
Hi. Hi.
Hi, it says here that you want to know how to know if your parents are good enough or wise enough to advise you. What seems to be the situation?
Well, so I guess, I don't want to base that off more of a singular case, more of just the question itself, but the case will be just that, I guess my dad asking me to focus on my economical life since I can't succeed in my spiritual life. And I just think that's off. Like, no matter what, I think as a Christian, we should rather be, homeless and have God than have the world and not have God.
Okay, so your dad is trying to look out for you economically, financially. He wants you to get, are you working or what is it that so you are working, but he wants you to get your finances in order, but you're saying, no, that's not important. I'd rather be homeless.
No. I'm saying that he's telling me, stand, I can't like stride or succeed with God, meaning just because of it, then to just, not focus on him and then focus on work. I know you can focus on both. I know that. But he's telling me, since I can't succeed with God, then to just kind of leave him on the side and make sure I get my finances. Well, not my finances, but make sure I get a career and, all that.
Okay. Bobby, what would you tell Kevin?
Well, Kevin, this is a longer conversation, obviously, because I'm speaking a little bit in a vacuum here as I'm trying my best to piece together some stuff. So I'm gonna fly high, and I'm not gonna assume a lot of details and specifics. And in flying high, I would say there's some principles that are important. First, every believer needs to keep God first in their life. And so when Jesus, he says, hey, I've come to bring a sword, you're going to see the separation sometimes in the family. It's not like he was wanting to just divide the family up, but truth will do that sometimes. And it puts families at odds with one another, and that can happen with a son wanting to walk with the Lord when the parents maybe don't value that relationship. And so all of a sudden, this is creating some division. And then ultimately, you're responsible unto the Lord. But we should want to honor our parents as much as possible. So on one side, what he's saying, you can recognize, it's good that we're financially responsible, that we can make a living. And another side, it's not good if he's saying that God's going to kind of cramp your style in life and you're not going to be able to be as effective in life walking with the Lord. So I would say, if it was me, I would talk to a counselor or a pastor and try to gather some more information, because my fear is there's too little time by the nature of this program for me to ask you the questions that would allow me to properly reply on your situation. So to conclude, first and foremost, yes, we keep the Lord first. Yes, we seek to honor our parents. If our parents ask us to compromise something that the Lord would do, in that moment, we keep the Lord first, but we should always seek to honor both the Lord and our parents, and only in the event that honoring our parents would cause us to not honor the Lord should we dishonor what our parents would say so that we would honor the Lord.
Tony Clark.
Yeah, we don't have all the information. We are speaking kind of just in generalities because we don't have the details and don't have time to get into the details. But here's the thing, if you're still staying at home under your parents' roof, that says a whole lot right there. Then that honoring your father and your mother still has to be because you are under their roof. Now, if he is saying, hey, you know what? You said you're serving God, but you can't even get a house or a roof on your own. So honoring God is not the thing. You need to kick God to the curb and get out there and get you a real career and stuff, because obviously serving God and being independently on your own, those are mutually exclusive things. So because we don't know whether you're staying at home under their roof, whether you are outside on your own, and he sees you serving God, but maybe not as successful as you could be. So there's a lot of information that's missing here.
Yeah.
John, anything to add?
These guys did a fantastic job.
There's the John Cube again.
You guys, seriously, that was a really good job.
Can we give some affirmation to John, too, and make sure he accepts it?
John, we love you. You know?
Yes.
I'm going to believe it. I'm going to believe it. I'm going to believe it.
That's right. I believe. You can do it, John.
Kevin, thanks for calling us today on Pastor's Perspective. 888-564-6173. Hey, Carlos, what did you want to know?
Hello.
What's up?
Yes, pastors, this goes back from 2014. Make long story short, the Lord, I want to give the Lord all the praise, and what happened is I was born with a spinal cyst, and I was become paralyzed regardless. I was walking with a cane and walking with a walker. I was getting worse. Anyways, one evening, we and my wife were discussing whether to have surgery or not, and we left it at that. So I went toward the grass, and Lord behold, I heard a voice behind me against the wall. The voice said, God said, "My will."
Okay.
So that's how it took for me to know that the Lord wanted me to have surgery.
Okay.
Yeah. So I had surgery. Excuse me. And I've always loved to share the word, share the gospel with people, And anyways, after surgery, they put you in the recovery room, and I remember perfectly, like it was yesterday. Mm-hmm. There was six nurses that come to see your vitals and that, and I shared the gospel with 6 nurses, Pastor, and they all came to know the Lord.
Awesome.
And I feel that's why the Lord wanted me to have surgery. I mean, to be there at that time, that was their appointment.
Could that have been possible, John?
Well, I mean, the fruit of him being able to be in a situation to, have the opportunity to lead those people to the Lord, I think that that's a beautiful work that God did. And I think that that's something that God just delights in doing. I think that there are times that, we may move in a specific direction, and there's a beautiful, gracious display of God's providence. But I just hope that for all of us, though, that we always make the primary way that we hear where God is leading us and directing us, from His Word. And that is the primary way God speaks to us. God does speak through creation, and that's called general revelation. God does, make His moral law known in the conscience of people. That's part of general revelation. But there is special revelation where God reveals His nature, His character, His attributes, and especially the gospel, how to go and be right with God, and that is through Christ and the Scriptures. And so we want to make sure that we hear Him, God God the Son, who is called the Word in John chapter 1 and in Revelation 19. In Revelation 19, he's called the Word of God. And we need to also go to the Scriptures, because the Scriptures is God's Word in written form given to us by the Holy Spirit. 2 Timothy 3:16 says all Scripture is God-breathed. 2 Peter chapter 1 tells us that holy men were moved by the Holy Spirit to give us these words. And so we want to make sure that we make those Christ and the Scriptures the primary means of us hearing God speak.
Tony Clark, what would you add?
After that, nothing. I don't have anything to add to that, because that's exactly what I would have said. Yes, that was beautiful.
Verbatim.
Very
Wow,
beautiful.
John, great job.
Well, that's an honor getting that kind of affirmation from Tony Clark, because I love this guy so much.
Well done, John.
But Tony, I really do. I appreciate all the years that you've been an example of a Bible guy, and I can't tell you enough how much that means to me. And Bobby, seriously, you are one of the smartest guys I know. And Brian Perez, you are seriously the best host that we've got on this show. This is like the best group of
John
people.
can't be encouraged without like encouraging you right back, you know?
Right, yeah.
It's like, hey, if you're out
Would
there,
you just take a
call
compliment?
him if you need encouragement. Just encourage John, and then he won't answer your question. He'll just encourage you.
Yes. Kevin, thank you or Carlos, I should say. I'm sorry. Thank you very much for your phone call today on Pastor's Perspective. Let's go to Linda in California. What did you want to know, Linda? What happened?
Hello, pastors. Thank you for answering my call, and I really appreciate the many different angles that you guys answer questions. My question has to do with my concern for a friend, a sister from the church. When we're in the car doing ministry or going someplace, she would rant off about her son, an adult son. She would tell stories that's not very kind of complaining about his behavior, and she would say, "I'm the mother, you should respect me, why couldn't you even give $5 to your mom when the next day you go camping," or something like that. And the younger brother is driving. The younger brother is 17, and he heard everything. So I would like to be able to help this sister. She's from my church. To watch her mouth. To be careful about speaking negative words in front of, about her kids. And can you give me some perspective how I can approach her and help her?
Bobby, what would you say?
I'm just be quiet about it. I just am concerned about her.
This is a tough question to answer because you get in these situations as human beings, right? And we go, man, there's some dysfunction here, and we want to help with that dysfunction. But then how do we go about helping that dysfunction and not creating more dysfunction? Because there are some people that can't take advice, for example. And so we have to have wisdom on even when to speak to certain individuals. There's people, like the Bible talks about, that are fools. And a fool is somebody that can't listen to advice. A fool is somebody that thinks that they're always right. And that's a very tough person to engage because they're foolish. And the problem with being foolish is you don't even realize you're foolish. In fact, many fools think they're wise, which makes this extra foolish. And that's a really tragic thought. So I would say you got to discern first who you're dealing with. So if you're dealing with a fool, well, then that raises the question, how does a wise person deal with a fool? But if you're dealing with a wise person, then you can say, if I'm wise, how does a wise person deal with a wise person? Now, we're trusting that you're not a fool, because if you were a fool trying to deal with a wise person, then that would be problematic too. So let's assume what we're dealing with is a scenario of a wise person wanting to confront a foolish person. How would we go about doing that? I think probably with asking questions, because foolish people tend to think that they know all the answers. So by asking questions, you put the foolish person in this position where they actually think that they can offer wisdom, even though they might sound like fools in what they offer. But if you will ask questions of this person, they won't feel threatened. They'll feel like that you're taking an interest. So you could just say questions like, hey, what's going on? Are you struggling with any frustration with your son? What's your strategy? Do you feel like sometimes that this makes matters worse? And that way, hopefully, you just put yourself in a seat of inquiry, and that will allow you to maybe then look for opportunities to share. But my fear is if you go in offering suggestions, if this person's a fool, that'll be dangerous. But let's assume this person maybe is wise, but they're being foolish in an area of their life. Well, then you might be able to go in and offer some statements right off the bat, and this person could be humble and teachable. But these are the kind of questions that we can't answer, right? Because we don't know exactly the context of the situation. So we have to say, well, here's the potential scenarios. Is it a wise person dealing with a foolish person, or a wise person? Or is it a foolish person dealing with a wise person or a foolish person? And based on these types of scenarios, it would create a different strategy for how to answer. Now, I know some of you out there are thinking, I would just hate to be in your head, Bobby, trying to figure out how to address a situation like this, because you would just complicate it. But it feels clean to me.
Tony, I was going to ask you, isn't it interesting how people can go to church, be serving in ministry? And I'm pointing at myself here when I say this, but even in the midst of working in ministry or getting out of a church service and driving home, and maybe the pastor wasn't speaking about gossiping and to watch what you say in front of other people, but there's still that tendency to just run our mouth and talk about people. How can we stop that?
Yeah, understanding that when you have a church full of people, no matter what the size is, everyone is not at the same spiritual level as the other. And we just finished talking about the dangers of the tongue. It's a little member, but it boasts of great things, and it says, what a fire it can spark. And I remember when I lived out there, about 30 years ago, that when we were at Calvary Vista, Pastor Brian and I, a homeless person plucked a cigarette butt and started a fire that burned from Escondido all the way to Vista. It would look like it was snowing, all from a little cigarette butt. And so the same thing, this 8-ounce member called a tongue, it can boast great things, and it can cause great harm to a lot of people. And we don't realize the power of our tongue. Matter of fact, Proverbs says that the life and death is in the power of the tongue. And so, yes, the Pentecostals have misused that verse, but there's still truth in that verse, all because a group might have misused it. So we have to be very careful. We have to be very mindful of the things we allow to come out. And a quick acronym is THINK. Is it true? Is it honest? Is it inspiring? Is it necessary? Is it kind? Before we let it come out.
Give us that acronym again.
THINK. THINK. Is it inspiring? Is it necessary? And is it kind? Before it comes out of our mouths.
Very nice. Good job, Sharon. Or was that Sharon? Yes. No. Sharon, we didn't get to your call. So sorry. And everybody else that we couldn't get to, really sorry that we ran out of time, but we will be back tomorrow. Please call us then. We'll be here from 3 to 4 p.m. Pacific time. For Tony Clark, Bobby Conway, and John Hwang, I'm Brian Perez. God bless you. Thanks for listening to Pastor's Perspective, sponsored by Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa.